Well, hey everybody, it's your good old pal EmptyHero, and today, because Capcom just can't say no to a Western developer with a mediocre pitch, we're going to discuss the squad-based third-person shooter that no one is talking about, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Insightful players will note that this unsolicited SOCOM-styled spin-off is appropriately named, as it takes place in the most dangerous coon-themed city since Camden, New Jersey. And, as with most operations, players will require anesthesia to proceed. This $1 tier humble bundle bait abandonware Games for Windows Live only online multiplayer-based interquel occurs during the events of the second and third Resident Evil games, and includes bastardized versions of their locations, characters, and events, while adding absolutely nothing iconic of its own. Contrarian troublemakers could try to argue that the addition of 4-person multiplayer adds a new dimension to the formula, but frankly, games like Left 4 Dead and Resident Evil Outbreak did it better, and the online community for RE Orc is deader than my chances of getting a second date with Syphilidia after she caught my dad and me shotgun blasting hot mustardy farts down the throat of her newborn baby son Terquillion, which, in our defense, was for the little bastard's own good. That ashy hogger of what should have been my free supply of mentholated mammy milk kept on yawning, and my pappy and I were trying to teach him to keep his mouth shut, lest John Podesta materialize from the dimension of woe, and slide his dangly retard nuts into that supple, toothless mouth. The kid's, not mine. In this, Spec Ops, the line leading right out the fucking door, players assume the role of one of Umbrella's Secret Service Delta team's 6 completely interchangeable paintball enthusiasts, whose personalities range from stereotypical brooding edgelord to stereotypical brooding edgelord, but with tits, and yet another complete waste of a great Resident Evil premise. Players will then lead a wet work team on loan from the Clinton Suicide Assistance Squad, composed of 3 of the other options the player didn't want to personally play as, on a mission to assassinate survivors, destroy all evidence that implicates Umbrella, and sabotage Raccoon City's infrastructure faster than if it elected a black Democrat mayor. However, instead of tactical squad-based clearings of iconic locations like the Raccoon City Police Department, successfully cornering and eliminating targets like Nikolai Zinoviev, or activating the self-destruct mechanisms of Umbrella's labs, players will mow down endless waves of brainless zombies, half of whom must have become infected by the T-virus during a gathering for Halter Top and Pete Rose haircut fetishists, and occasionally corner a character from one of the numbered Resident Evil games, but fail to kill them in order to avoid conflicting with the canon or allowing the player to have any actual fun. Because the protagonist has to be interchangeable, yet adhere to identical actions, they have almost no unique characterizations beyond the slightly different things they enjoy brooding about, and since the characters borrowed from earlier games scale from complete bastardizations like the new, batshit crazy version of Nikolai who converts zombies to Islam just to fuck with you and can snipe a helicopter pilot in mid-flight, but not shoot you while you stand directly below him, to bland nothing burgers like Claire, better dead than Redfield, who say and do as little as possible in order to avoid creating continuity errors. The writing of Operation Raccoon City comes off as nonsensical garbage on the level of a mid-series anime filler arc. I was actually kinda disappointed that the main campaign didn't end with Leon Kennedy peering back at the wolf pack while the subway train drove him away to safety, and whispering to Claire, "Let's never talk of those idiots again," as she kneels and tries to grab him by the hog before he sharply reminds her of his newly found, incurable infection of yellow fever. Gameplay-wise, modern Resident Evil games tend to shit the bed the moment enemies with guns appear, and in Operation Raccoon City, you open the first door to the first room and are instantly forced into a mandatory cover-based shooting segment where you cannot proceed until every enemy is killed. This wouldn't be so bad if you could order your team tactically, swap between different characters to take advantage of their specialized roles, or if the AI had enough sense to properly flank and provide cover fire. Unfortunately, Literally no one in the world is playing this game, and the AI on both sides of the firefights is abysmal. AI partners will not only walk directly into your line of fire, but also into literal lines of fire. And since Capcom never advertised this game or ported its multiplayer from Games for Windows Live to Steam, most players will be forced to play alone, which at level 1 boils down to crouching behind cover and taking more blind shots than Stevie Wonder at a bar. Progressing through levels allows players to unlock the sort of cooldown timer-based bonus abilities you'd normally find in a shitty pay-to-win iPad game, but since only non-AI controlled characters can use them, you'll be stuck with a level 1 team from beginning to end. As a result, the different classes of your team are useless, and the medic will shotgun life-giving green herb into your face less often than a Jamaican girlfriend. Slant 6's attempts to include noteworthy events from Resident Evil 2 and 3 include the initial confrontation with Birkin that leads to the outbreak, Nemesis blowing up Jill's evac helicopter in front of the clock tower, and the gigantic fucking laser gun used to kill a bunch of Mr. X's. But with the exception of that final example, which only occurs in the slightly superior Echo 6 DLC campaign, most of those events either occur off-screen, in a cutscene, or are completely inconclusive. For example, you are tasked with temporarily stunning, reprogramming, and escaping from the Nemesis. But ultimately, these confrontations boil down to performing a laundry list of scripted events, and occasionally, those scripts break. I wasted a good 10 minutes of my life that I could have spent making erotic source filmmaker art of Ada Wong stomping on kittens, while trying to figure out why this gigantic Down syndrome burn victim in Centobite clothes was just standing around with his dick hanging out, as we all do from time to time, until I realized that I had failed to ignite the prerequisite amount of superfluous exploding barrels, and even though the final barrel was nowhere near the Nemesis, blowing it up would cause him to react as though hurt, and the fight could finally proceed. Every time this poorly rendered brick made of compressed scrotums appears, you are supposed to either use explosive barrels to slow him down, or try to kill him outright. But running directly to the exit has no downsides, and the few times you're actually forced to fight Birkin, he just says nope, and jumps through a hole he busts in the floor faster than me when a police siren sounds in the distance on the 1st of the month when child support is due. And half of the time when a Mr. X appears, you can literally just run past it. Regular enemies include Spec Ops squads that can take more bullets to the ass and survive than a newly come out of the closet 50 Cent who's broken into an anal vibrator factory. Skinless jerks that specialize in licking because you've kicked them 67 times in the dick, the scariest hordes of red-headed monstrosities since the Irish, hunters with near infinite health, and soulless headcrab knockoffs. Occasionally, a precision zombie bite to the knob will turn a teammate undead, and they'll run around in circles with their arms held out, like a lonely black boy looking for someone to hug on Father's Day. This generally ends with that character being decapitated by another teammate, then revived from a pile of giblets by the player. This mechanic is supposed to be balanced by antiviral sprays and partially infected players taking reduced damage. But since no one plays this game and AI partners refuse to pick up items, it generally boils down to either saving the infected yourself or headshotting the poor fuck while they're still alive to skip the zombie phase altogether. Just picking up items is a hassle in general since you have to look down at them to activate the button prompt, and an intolerable amount of grenades will fly about as far as if you try to launch them at enemies with a blast of asparagus piss. The 2 Echo 6 DLC campaign packs are slightly better than the main campaign, and are usually bundled with the game when it goes on sale for $1. In them, you play as a crew of Team Fortress 2 Chinese knockoffs that play identically to the USS Wolfpack. Their goal, besides getting to the live-action role-players convention on time, is to support the Spec Ops squads, restart Raccoon City's utilities, and rescue Sherry Birkin from Umbrella as they've played Resident Evil 6 and know that she grows up to be a delicious sot. And frankly, if I wanted to defend a white girl from hordes of mindless monstrosities covered in raw sewage, I'd have taken that job as Melania Trump's bodyguard for her African tour. These missions are somewhat less of a clusterfuck than the main campaign, and do a much better job of integrating boss characters into the missions. Though, for some reason, Jill now looks scarier than the zombies, and Carlos's face seems to have been designed using the character creator engine from the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. Overall, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City isn't a terrible game, it just is not meant for single player, and the online component is more abandoned than my oldest son at the Mexican border after I caught him wearing some of the high heels from the bag of incriminating evidence I keep by the incinerator. It's less of an embarrassment than Resident Evil 6 and Umbrella Corps, and despite its sloppiness and glaring flaws, Orc could have been a pretty fun 4-player game if it were actually possible to convince 3 other people to play it with you. Though, you'd probably have more luck getting someone to willingly join the back end of your human centipede on Taco Tuesday. Well, that's it for today's video. If you liked it, you can subscribe, tell a friend about it. If you don't have any friends, you can break into other people's houses and bookmark this video on their computers instead. Or use the links provided in the description of this video to join my Discord so that you too can post ironic memes at 3 o'clock in the morning. Check out one of my original ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks. Toss $1 at me on Patreon for the right to vote on which game I'll make my next video essay about. Or you can do none of those things and pray that God forgives you, because I certainly will not. Until then, thanks for your time and goodbye!